Appearing for the first time in the Chicago area, a uniquely curated tribute to the timeless glamour of Hollywood's golden age and the wardrobes that defined it. With screen-worn costumes that span classic and contemporary film history from 1939 to 2005, Glitz-Glamour-Gorgeous, a tribute to Hollywood movie costumes at the Gail Borden Public Library in Elgin, Illinois, offers an up-close look at the fashion that helped shape some of cinema's iconic moments. Fasten your seatbelts. It's gonna be a total delight. Welcome to Classic Movie Club. I'm your host, Chad Knirk, the digital editor of Film Review. We've been celebrating cinema here at Film Review since 1944. Today, we're returning to the world of costume design. From Elizabeth Taylor's regal ensemble in Cleopatra to Bette Davis's off-the-shoulder gown in All About Eve, and pieces worn by former Film Review contributors Doris, Gregory Peck, Lana Turner, and Betty Grable, Glitz-Glamour-Gorgeous showcases 33 screen-worn pieces, representing important designers like Adrian, Edith Head, Orry-Kelly, Walter Plunkett, Helen Rose, Irene Sharaff, and William Travilla. The treasures come from the private collection of Greg Schreiner, a renowned pianist, producer, and lifelong collector of Hollywood memorabilia. Schreiner is the president and a founding member of Marilyn Remembered, the longest-running fan club devoted to continuing the legacy of Marilyn Monroe. Schreiner has spent decades preserving the garments that helped define the golden age of cinema. His passion evolved into Hollywood Revisited, a traveling stage production in which several of the costumes in his collection come to life through performance and music. Let's take a look at the craftsmanship behind these artifacts and revisit Hollywood with Greg Schreiner. Your collection is an impressive cross-section of Hollywood history. How did your journey as a collector begin?
Well, I started collecting Marilyn Monroe first because I'm president of her fan club. So I wanted something of Marilyn's to have in my home. And I got a dress. And this was back in 1982. And I really loved it. It was so exciting to have something that I knew she actually touched. So I thought, well, I'll get another one. And so I went to another auction and I was able to get that as well. And things were still affordable back in 1982. However, things started going up and escalating. And eventually I really couldn't afford Marilyn. But by that time, I just loved the idea of owning things. I started collecting other movie stars. And then one day I woke up and I had 500 in my closet. I thought, wow. Things have gotten out of hand, but in a good way, which is where, do you know about my show that I do?
Right, Hollywood Revisited.
That's where that all came about, because I've got to do something. So I combine my musical abilities, I'm a pianist by profession, with the costumes, and I have singers and dancers wearing them. I project behind them the image of the scene that their costume is seen in, and people love it. It's like they get to go back again and sort of touch a little of that era that they loved. And the Golden Age was a very special time, as you I'm sure no. And we'll never have it again because the studios don't have costume departments anymore. And so they don't have the ability to do that kind of everything. It wasn't real. It was a sort of a magical time. The sets were not on location. They were on the studios, and the costumes were not realistic. They were over the top, wonderful.
A dream factory.
Yeah. So that's why people, I think, went to the movies partly to get away from their everyday world and see this magical, wonderful land that didn't really exist, but they wanted it to exist. When they see the show, people come up to me, they're almost crying, some of them. It's like, I can't believe I've been able to go back and relive a bit of that again. And it's very magical. And it makes me very happy that I can do that for people.
Talk to me about preservation. I know that's important to you. I hear costumes on people and I go, ah!
I know. And let me first preface that by saying only about 10% of my collection ever makes it into the show.
Yeah.
The costumes I feel can survive that. And I'll preface that also by saying I've spoken to several costume designers that are major ones, like Albert Wolski, who won the Academy Award 3 times for his costume design. And he agrees that he says, I design these costumes to be moving on figures. He said, when they're on a mannequin, they're not really showing what my costume can do. So he personally loves what I'm doing with all that. Now, yes, there are other people that say you should never, ever do anything to a costume. You know, if a costume ever shows any sign of wear, I pull it from the show immediately, and that's the last time it's on stage. But I've always thought somehow in my brain that the costumes are living longer because they're so happy to be seen again.
Mm.
Not sure that's true, but it seems to be. I mean, the show has been going for over 20 years now, and some of the costumes show no wear whatsoever. And they're only worn for that brief moment they're on the stage, and then they're taken off. And I steam them after every show, and I do everything I can to preserve them. But the other 90% of my collection rests in acid-free boxes and acid-free tissue, and that's the preferred way to preserve costumes. But I don't collect them to keep them in boxes. I collect them for people to enjoy. So that's why I'm always anxious to get an exhibit going wherever I can, like the one in Chicago. I have another one opening at the DeMille Barn in Hollywood. I'm working with the Motion Picture Academy for a huge exhibit on Marilyn Monroe next June, as well as London and Paris are going to have big exhibits of my collection too. So it's a very exciting time for costume.
You have a direct connection to the library that kind of sparked the exhibit. What's the connection there? And how did you, out of 500 costumes, how did you narrow down what you were going to put in the exhibit?
Well, yeah, my connection to the whole exhibit in Chicago is that the head of the entire library, she and I went to school together at Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois, and so we were classmates at the same time. And who knew that she would end up being in this position. And 2 years ago, I did a show in Elgin, my Hollywood Visited show at the Elgin College, and she came to it. And so she was sparked by how exciting that was to do an exhibit then in this beautiful, stunning space, which is the most spectacular library I've ever been in. It's just really gorgeous. So it's been a great experience doing it there.
How did you narrow it down to just
Oh,
30?
how did I narrow it down? Well, I didn't actually. She did. I sent her a lot of potential costume possibilities with photos of them, and she picked out what she thought would be the good ones. I personally would have chosen a few different ones, but what she chose were good ones. I mean, there's nothing was bad. But we're talking now about bringing back another exhibit of different costumes, and I think this time I will choose.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
Not that hers were bad choices, but I have some really great ones I don't want to miss out on being seen.
Yeah.
So that's where maybe next time I'll work with her more on what I think would be good.
Now, among these 3 dozen pieces, for
Mhm.
you, are there any that hold particularly special memories or backstories behind the pieces?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of my costumes have a history. The two of the really important ones that are in the exhibit are the Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra and the Bette Davis from All About Eve. And those two came directly from the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and they were on exhibit, and they just literally shipped them to Chicago. And so they already had 2 years of being seen in London and to rave reviews, and then they came to Chicago after that. So they've had a lot of travel. They've been enjoying international travel. The stories, I guess, would be that how I got different ones. The Bette Davis came directly from Edith Head's estate. She had pulled a lot of her costumes and was doing fashion shows all over the world with them. And when she died, she had all these costumes that she actually had in her possession, which I was lucky enough to get that particular costume from. Costumes come from everywhere. Mostly today they come from auctions. But when I first started collecting, it was amazing. I even found some costumes in thrift stores.
Wow.
People didn't know what was there, and it was a time when people didn't care as much about costumes, so they weren't looking for them as actively. Nowadays, that would be almost impossible, but it was fun. It was an exciting time, and I wish I'd started even earlier, like
Yeah.
the famous MGM auction when things really went cheap.
Right.
Uh, you know,
Yeah.
have some ruby slippers or something. But I was a kid when that happened, and I had no money, so there was no way I could have done it.
It is amazing how the market has evolved. And on one hand, it's exciting that these pieces are are being seen as legitimate art. That's something that should be preserved. And on the other hand, unless you have deep pockets, it's hard to get into collecting now because
It's really difficult unless you just are willing to settle for minor pieces that are not as important. And a lot of things today are off the rack costumings, which means they literally just bought them at a department store and they're not made by the studio. And they generally don't go as high as these things that were made by designers and the studios and everything. It's a different world. And unfortunately, a lot of the really major pieces that go for millions of dollars are not being bought by collectors. They're being bought by individuals with a lot of money that are making an investment. And they're not concerned about the costume so much. It's a great investment for them, which I find a little sad. And you sometimes never see them again because they have no interest in displaying them or anything. They just want to have it as an investment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that the likelihood of those pieces being seen is greatly diminished versus someone who's
Yeah.
collecting in order to share them.
Or you get someone like Ripley's Believe It or Not, who buys the Marilyn Monroe birthday dress and then loans it out for somebody to wear who obviously is not the same size as Marilyn and damages the dress beyond repair.
Right.
And they don't care. And that's the sad part. But
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we hope that these pieces are with collectors or museums that preserve them and give fans and classic movie lovers a chance to see them. And also, in terms of the designers, that's one thing about this exhibit. There are so many great names, so many great
right.
designers in the exhibit, and it's an opportunity to share the stories of the people who made the dresses and the
Totally. And it's very, I mean, frankly, without them, we wouldn't have the costumes. They are the ones that were hired by the studios. They only worked for that studio, and they were amazingly talented people that just cranked out so many incredible designs over the years. And I love what the library has done, where they have a placard for each one with a story about each costume. And some even have a monitor where they're showing the actual scene from the film at the same time. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that they also have some book and movie lists so that patrons can dive
Yep.
even deeper.
Yep. It's yay, bravo. We need that because I teach at a college and I'm shocked at how many of my students know nothing about any of the old stars at all.
Mhm.
Even some that are alive, like Julie Andrews, they don't know who she is. They've never heard of The Sound of Music. They don't know any of this. And it makes me feel old and it makes me feel sad
Yeah,
that they have no interest in anything old. They only want to see current film.
yeah, and I think what a lot of younger generations might not realize is how those films have influenced the films that they
Totally.
today.
That's true of all history, isn't it? If you don't know the past, you can't understand why the present is what it is. And I remember as a kid watching The Late Show on television, which was the only way I could see movies, and that was old movies, and I loved them. And I knew the old stars way before my time even. So I hope we can inspire some people to start checking out some of these older films.
Yeah, absolutely. One gown that I have to bring up because she's having her centennial this year is Geraldine Page, the Sweet Bird of Youth gown that's in.
Yes, and I have one more from that movie too that I didn't give them, and I love her. She's I think one of the great talents of Hollywood, and
Absolutely.
probably not as appreciated as she should be when you look at her body of work and
Yeah.
how wonderful she was. Yeah,
A lot of her work stayed on stage, but even with the short filmography that she had, I mean, 8 Oscar
there's
nominations.
some good ones, some really good
Yeah.
ones. Yep.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned traveling the world with these pieces. Through this exhibit, you've also had an opportunity to put on some events, to lead a tour. What's that experience been like in engaging with the community and classic movie lovers?
Oh, I love the audiences and the people because for me, when I hear the enthusiasm and the excitement that they have when they see things, it makes me feel so good because I started collecting with that in mind that someday I would have a chance to share with the world what I have and my love. And while I was in Chicago, I also did a lecture on the costumes, and I did also a piano recital of all movie music. So I had lots of opportunities to share the old Hollywood, and it was so enthusiastic. I
Mm.
was shocked at how big the turnouts were and how much the audience just loved it. I'm very encouraged by that and looking forward to doing some more performances.
And I know that throughout your career, throughout your time collecting, you've gotten to meet some amazing people, legends in their own rights. Um, I'm curious who made a big impression on you.
Well, my early people that I had were Jane Russell and Rhonda Fleming. They
Mm,
both came to see my show. I had costumes there, and Rhonda and I became friends, and Jane and I met a couple times. But the two people that have most influenced my life are George Chakiris and Richard Chamberlain.
mm,
We've become very good friends. Unfortunately, Richard passed away recently, but he did several shows for me where he would come on stage and talk about the costumes during my show, and what a thrill for the audience and what a thrill for me.
yeah.
But to get to know them as friends has been very special because growing up, I watched Dr. Kildare on TV, for instance, and I saw West Side Story, and never dreaming I would actually know these people someday and count them as my friends. So the costumes have given me another avenue through these people being my friends, which I'm so grateful for.
We started with Marilyn Monroe, maybe to
Yeah.
close us out. She has her centennial coming up next year.
Yes, which is where we're doing the Paris and London and Academy Museum.
Yeah, what can you share about those plans?
Well, I just know they're all three really going all out to do something amazing, and they're pretty much encompassing my entire collection.
Wow.
Between the three of them, I will have nothing for a while. But that's okay. I'm thrilled that they're doing it, particularly the Academy, because the Academy, as you probably remember, did nothing for Marilyn while she was alive. She was not even really a presenter except one time and never, ever got even a nomination. So it's exciting that they're finally recognizing how important she is to Hollywood. So we'll see. Myself and another collector are pretty much the whole exhibit for all three. We're dividing our collection equally among the three of them. It should be a wonderful time to celebrate Marilyn because,
Yeah.
in my opinion, she's probably the most recognized star of all of Hollywood.
Mhm.
And I think that she deserves all the recognition she can get. She's really been a big part of my life, and I've met so many people over the years as president of her club that knew her. So it's like I never met her, but I feel like I know her anyway.
What's this journey been like?
Well, I've had a blast. Who knew? I grew up in this little tiny town of 500 people in called Orangeville in Illinois. And I just dreamed of Hollywood. And now I'm living in Hollywood, basically. I have this huge collection of costumes. I have this huge collection of Marilyn Monroe artifacts. So my home's like a museum. But to wake up every morning surrounded by all these amazing stars of Hollywood, and particularly Marilyn Monroe, so many things that were hers and now I own. I'm thrilled and delighted, and it makes me very happy. I'm so glad that it turned out the way it did. I don't know how we do anything different. I've just loved every moment of it.
In today's market, it may be a challenge to begin a collection, but it's easy to support exhibits of Golden Age memorabilia and the museums and individuals who preserve, protect, and share a little of that stardust with all of us. That's our show. We hope you enjoyed the journey. If you like what we do, please consider becoming a member of Classic Movie Club. Your support helps us produce a new episode each month and continue the legacy of film review. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review, and share the podcast with all your film friends. My thanks again to Greg Schreiner and the Gail Borden Public Library. You can learn more about Greg Schreiner, Hollywood Revisited, Glitz-Glamour-Gorgeous, and future exhibits at the Gail Borden Public Library in our show notes. We invite you back next month for another adventure, but until then, here's looking at you, kid.